Just before we dive back into the episode, I wanted to quickly share something that might interest you, especially if today's conversation has got you thinking about your own sustainability work. Some of the things we hear most in this industry are, I wish I could connect with other people doing this work, or I'd love to turn my sustainability expertise into something more. Well, 51 to Carbon Zero, the sponsor of this podcast, have created their own referral network. And it does exactly that. This isn't about selling you something, it's actually about helping you make money while building the sustainability community we all need. So here's what's in it for you. First, you get to join a genuine community of sustainability experts who share knowledge, refer work to each other, and solve problems together. So, no more working in isolation. Secondly, there's real money involved. There's 10% plus commission on software referrals. We're talking about projects that go from 30 grand up to 100 grand. Plus, you'll be able to boost your presence by taking part in our fireside chats. I've actually got an email in front of me from Louise Stevens, one of the ambassadors, and it says that all her clients are genuinely happy because she's got a great partner and her clients love them. But here's the bigger picture. You'll be helping accelerate the sustainability transition that we all desperately need. Every referral, every connection, every collaboration moves us closer to the world we're all working towards. If this resonates with you and you want to earn some extra income, click the link in our show notes to become a 51 to Carbon Zero ambassador. Okay, back to the show. Welcome back to the Green Element podcast, where we feature business leaders and innovators transforming their operations to be more environmentally and socially sustainable. I'm your host, Will Richardson, and I can't wait to meet our guest today and help you on your journey of sustainability. Welcome to the Green Element podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we've got Bruce Bratley, who is the CEO and founder of First Mile, the waste company. And I think what is really exciting about speaking to Bruce is how he has changed his business to help others through this coronavirus pandemic, and not just in 2 months' time after. It was literally almost from day one helping people. And welcome to the show. I can't wait to speak more to you.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
I guess what would be great to start off with is, what is your purpose as an organisation?
So the purpose for First Mile is to help businesses and actually increasingly households reduce their carbon impact or their environmental impact. And what we are trying to do is to get people to change their habits, because I've sort of been doing environmental stuff for years, and the science is done. The science is half-baked. We had a long 20-year battle disproving the climate change skeptics, but they've all been put to bed now. The science is done, and what we now need to do is to get people to start to do something. And the problem with the environment, it's so massive, and environmental scientists make this worse by saying that there's this huge problem, global problem, that we need to change. And people who are sitting in their offices go, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's far too difficult. So what First Mile is trying to do is to get people to make small habit changing steps every single day, which eventually will lead to a positive impact on the environment. So what we're really trying to do is to deliver green impact services to businesses who then become greener and reduce their environmental impact on the planet.
And do you help with the any kind of reduction strategies and stuff through waste within that?
Yeah, we do. And my friends who are sort of outside of the environmental sector or the recycling sector say, you're crazy. Why are you talking to people about waste minimization and waste reduction and reuse strategies when you get paid to take the stuff away? My view is there's so much of this damn stuff that it's more than a lifetime's work trying to get rid of waste. But actually, we're really interested in helping businesses minimize the amount of waste they've got. There's some real challenges around that because by its very nature, waste isn't measured. Therefore, if it's not measured, how do you get a baseline? So we've put in place technologies to give customers a baseline of the amount of material they've got by streams, and then they can see how they're progressing towards minimizing the amount of waste that they're generating. So it's a really interesting sort of long-term question, really, which is how do we, from a business perspective, how do we monetize customers who don't produce any waste? So what we're trying to do is figure out how we can charge people for not generating any waste, but that's some years off yet. But we're really interested in waste minimization, and we really see that as a key component of delivering a green impact as a business.
You've been in the waste industry for quite a long time now, haven't you? Over that time, I mean, how long have you been working in it?
I suppose I got interested in recycling back in the early 90s when I was doing my PhD in environmental Marxism, and I actually studied waste incineration in Teesside in 1994. So that long.
Brilliant.
However long that is.
So that's kind of why I wanted to ask this question was, over that time, have you seen a change in habit with waste in businesses?
Yeah, in some ways it's getting more complicated because the waste stream used to be relatively straightforward, and it was some plastics, lots of sort of plastic bottles and containers. Not such heavy use of plastic to what we call at First Mile two-dimensional plastics, which is plastic film pouches, two-dimensional containers. And there's lots of paper, cardboard, glass, metals. It's a relatively simple waste stream. In the last 10, 15 years, and partly as a consequence of waste minimization and reducing the weight of packaging, so it's not all bad, there's been a massive change in the composition of materials in the waste stream. And we still obviously have paper, cardboard, plastics, glass, etc., but everything's been lightweighted. So we see a much higher use of two-dimensional plastics as a packaging item. So you take your classic sort of detergent for a washing machine, used to come in a cardboard box. Now it comes in a thin, lightweight plastic pouch, and which is harder to recycle, but good for the amount of materials and the carbon impact of that, getting that product to market. Also, lightweighting has resulted in a growing number of composite materials, which are harder to recycle. And also, packaging scientists have got much better at, which is bad for recycling, but good for marketing, at bonding different types of material together. So you get a plastic, you used to just get a Tetra Pak cube of milk. You now get a cube of milk with a plastic resealable cap in it. So you've got multiple materials. So the waste stream has changed an enormous amount since the early 90s. And from an end of life perspective, it just gets harder and harder to recycle. If you're manufacturing detergent or oat milk or whatever you're making, you might find a really nice solution for your product, but it all ends up in my facility, and then we have to try and sort it out, which becomes every year a more and more difficult job.
And is there any dialogue between the people designing these packages, the packaging, and you as the waste contractor?
We talk to some of our customers about some products. So, we talk to last year a well-known coffee brand and got them to change some of their packaging. We've spent a lot of time working with Fortnum and Masons around there, and they can sort of, because they're premier products, they can afford to change some of their packaging about making it more recyclable and reusable within the household. So we do, but it's at the moment it's sort of relatively small scale, and the difficulty is the supply chains are really long, and you tend to get smaller producers who are really interested in changing their packaging, but actually they're just buying packaging from wholesalers, and they don't have that much control over the origins and the format of packaging. And the people that we really need to get to change their view are the big companies, the massive FMCGs, the Unilevers, the Procter and Gambles of the world, who are putting huge amounts of packaging, and I don't just mean plastic packaging, huge amounts of packaging onto the marketplace, which we can make more recyclable. And there's the very famous case of Lucozade, who put the bright coloured wrap around a plastic bottle, which meant it couldn't be recycled because the infrared light sorters that saw plastic bottles couldn't see what type of plastic it was, because all they could see was an orange Lucozade wrap. So there's a huge amount of work still to do down the supply chain, but things are starting to change, which is positive.
Good. And more and more dialogue happening is probably a good thing.
It is indeed, yeah, and it's really important to sort of get people to talk about it. But I was talking to on a parliamentary evidence committee for fashion last week, and there's loads of great stuff going on in fashion around recycling and reuse and repair and new models, but it's tiny compared to the actual volume of clothes that are shoved down people's throats through social media and buy 52 seasons and everything coming super cheap, and it's a tiny impact, and we have got such a long way to go to shift that mindset away from high-speed, disposable, single-use items, and that's across the piece. But there is hope. We're starting to make change, but it sort of is frustrating. It doesn't start to come quicker. And the people, and it's sort of where I started really, is environmentalists were our own worst enemy, because we're constantly talking about massive global issues that turn people off, or we're arguing with ourselves about massive global issues. What we need to do is to say, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can do really easily to halve our carbon impact. Buy green energy. First Mile now sells green energy. Really quick thing to do. It's really easy. It's cheaper than regular energy now. Switch, buy green energy. You're doing a massive favor to the environment. It's really easy. You can do it today. It's super simple, and you save money. You don't need to do a carbon footprint for that. You don't need to do a life cycle analysis for that. You don't need to have an argument with some environmentalists down the pub. You can just do it today. And there's so many low-hanging fruit of things that people can start to do now that they just need to get on and do. But what we tend to do is we tend to go down this sort of rabbit hole of talking about life cycle analysis of whether one thing is better than another thing. The number of offices I go into, and they still have plastic bottles or single-use glass bottles full of water in the meeting rooms, where they just put a bloody water fountain in. They've been around for 30 years. So things can start to change quickly. But what we need to do is to get behaviors changed. And we need to get everybody to do things slightly different day to day. There's billions of people on the planet, and we've all made trillions of incorrect choices, often forced by or marketing people persuade us to make these changes, which has got us into the problem we're in. Now what we need to do is to get billions of people to make trillions of correct choices. And they can all be quite small, just small positive choices, like not taking the buy one, get one free option at the supermarket, like eating the crusts off your loaf of bread. They're all really small things. But if everybody starts to make those small changes, billions of people have a massive impact, and we'll start to turn things around again. We don't need to all go out and buy a Tesla and turn everything green on day one. We can do things small initially. There's a great book by somebody called James Clear, Atomic Habits, if you're interested. And what we need to do is to get people to start to change their habits. And it's why recycling is super interesting, because in the grand scheme of things, recycling isn't a massive environmental it doesn't deliver massive environmental benefit. It obviously it delivers environmental benefit, but not massive. We're much better off switching to green energy, or if you look at mining or concrete production, or fashion or farming or food. These all have much bigger environmental impacts if we address how we consume things. But recycling is really important. It's one of the most important environmental activities that people can do, because it changes habits on day one, and you can do it every single day, and you can interact with things you're throwing away. And if you can see that there's something in your waste stream, it probably means there's problems further up the supply chain. If you're cleaning out your wardrobe and throwing away 20 t-shirts that you've only worn once, you need to ask yourself some pretty serious questions about what you're doing with 20 t-shirts in the first place, rather than worrying about whether you're recycling them at the charity shop or not. So I'd get changing habits. If you want to get fit, don't set yourself a goal of going to the gym 7 times a week. Just put your gym kit on in the morning. By the time you get your gym kit on, you might go for a short run or might do something, and just tell yourself you're going to put your gym kit on every morning, 7 days a week, rather than say you're going to go and do an hour's workout. And it's just about that habit forming stuff. You get up in the kit on, not your onesie, and then there's a chance you might go and do something rather than lie on the sofa watching TV.
That sounds really interesting. I'm certainly going to look up that book. Could you tell us a bit about how you engage your staff, suppliers, and customers with your mission and purpose?
Yeah, so culture is the one word there, really. And culture sort of, we've spent a lot of time on it, really. It's a buzzword that a lot of companies throw around. And they go, we've got a great culture. I started looking at the culture of the business because we took some external investment 3 years ago, and we had loads and loads of sort of whizzy, smart people come around to the business that had never seen us before and said, wow, you've got an amazing culture. And I was like, right, okay. So once someone tells me something that's good, that I don't understand it, I take it very seriously. So we spent a lot of time trying to understand our culture and work on it. And if, frankly, someone thinks it's good, it could probably be better. So we've spent a lot of time working on this because it is really the foundation of our success. And it's all about the values and behaviors that we work and live by. It's not something that magically happens. And it's why people love working at First Mile. It's the bedrock of our brand. And it's sort of why we beat our competitors, win customers, and get suppliers to work with us. And if you're interested in the culture, you can just Google First Mile Big Green Buck, or I think it's maybe just called the Big Buck. It describes our culture and what we are about, and how we've worked towards sort of having this sort of winning culture, but is also a very nice place to work, because I'm super competitive and everyone we hire is super competitive, but we don't stand on each other to succeed. We're very supportive and collegiate and look after each other. We won an award a couple of weeks ago for recognizing and supporting mental health as an issue in the workplace. So we do a range of things from supporting and recognizing mental health as a workplace issue, diversity. We are a LGBTQ plus recognized business. We've done a lot of work with Stonewall and training. I do CEO walks in the countryside to get everyone who lives in the city out once a month and get some fresh air and talk about the business or talk about flowers, and get out and walk in the countryside. We do terranium workshops, make and mend workshops, lunch and learns, huge amount of work around the culture, which if you look at our P&L, you go, why are you spending all that money on it? But it delivers 10 times the investment because we have a great team of people that live by our values, which is treating people fairly, and amazing customers, while we are on our North Star mission of reducing businesses' environmental impact through our green impact services. Does that answer the question, Will?
Yes, it does. What I'd like, so you had this investment in a few years ago and you had these whizzy people saying you had amazing culture. Was there anything that you changed on the back of that? Did you go, oh, actually, we could do this better?
No, we wrote it down, which is what the big buck is. It's the first mile big buck of the culture, because we didn't really. It was just there, and it's something that had, I guess, because I lead. I sort of set up. Ironically, I set up a business not because I wanted to be the next, super entrepreneur. I set up a business because I didn't like being told what to do or being scrutinized. But ironically, you're constantly scrutinized when you're the leader of a business.
Yep.
and you have to behave in a particular way. I have very sort of strong ethics and a clear sort of way of working, and the culture had sort of emerged from that, and the culture book's very much a sort of a blueprint of my sort of work ethics and mind, really. But we'd never written it down, and the worry was with the business growing and me being less hands-on in the business, because we've got we had another layer of management involved. I didn't want to lose that essence of first mile and that culture. So the first thing we did is we wrote it down, we tweaked it, we didn't change it. And when we understood it, we then invested across all of the values that deliver the culture. And the culture is an activation of the values that you hold dear to the business, and you activate the values through behaviors and how you behave. You don't just have a culture by magic, and any business with a strong culture works on it, and they work on it, and everybody understands what it is, and they understand the mission, and they understand what you're doing, and they understand the direction of travel that you're going on. And actually, the magic source for First Mile isn't anything. We do lots of things differently. We do lots of things cleverly, but the fundamentals are the culture, and it's what gets me out of bed in the morning. It's why I come to work, is for the people and the culture. It's the super interesting stuff, and it links directly into that piece around behavior change and habit changing, because we have a behavioral issue. Everyone goes, we're saving the planet. Planet's going to be absolutely fine. What we're trying to do is save humanity. How are we going to save humanity? We're going to save humanity by changing people's hearts and minds and behaviors. And First Mile is a company that's trying to do that. And if we're a bunch of shysters with terrible values, or we don't understand our cultures, how on earth are we going to do that? So, we can't culturally, to use an environmental metaphor, stand on a carved iceberg that's floating into the southern oceans or the northern oceans, which, depending where the carving happened, slowly getting thinner and thinner, because we're not standing on a culturally valid foundation. And we're trying to do that in a way that says, this is how we're behaving and how we're thinking about the world, and we want to bring you on that journey because we need to get you to change your behavior.
When it comes to
my analogy didn't work so well there.
No, it did. I get it. It's I think it is really hard, isn't it? It's really complicated. I think this leads on to my next question of, when it comes to running an ethical and sustainable business, what has been your biggest struggle so far? And can you tell us a bit about how you've overcome it?
For us, it's sort of getting back to the thing we were talking about at the start, which is, recycling is a relatively new business, and fundamentally what we're trying to do is get people to do more recycling. People think it's really easy, and you just put something in your bin and it all sort of gets taken away by magic. And they don't really understand that there's actually, recycling's got really long supply chains, and they're usually quite confused supply chains, because it's a very nascent market, and not particularly well established, and there's lots of data issues because it's waste, therefore you don't measure it. So one of the challenges really has been, we're dealing in a very sort of new market. I mean, it's one of the exciting things and the opportunities. We're working in a new market. Our product, if you like, which is waste, is changing all the time, because there's people further up the supply chain who are making packaging or products which are innovating at a very rapid rate. So we've got new materials coming into the waste stream or new formats coming into the waste stream all the time. We then have our sort of product users, if you like, who sort of have low levels of knowledge and very conflicting sources of information, because they go from one council to another council, and one council saying rinse out your yogurt pots, another one saying we don't recycle yogurt pots at all, or whatever it is. So there's lots of imprecise and inconsistent information coming into the users of our products, which then causes us problems because we can't get consistent materials, and therefore it's harder to recycle those materials further down the supply chain. So there's a huge amount going on in that arena, and you've got a user who, and this is starting to change. You've got users who think it's waste, therefore it's the cost of managing it comes straight off the bottom line. Therefore, it just needs to be as cheap as possible, and we don't really care what happens to it. And that's sort of the context of the market, and that's starting to change. And also, there's apathy around, and people are like, well, I don't really care about waste. It's not my core product, or I don't really care about recycling. And that is also starting to change. So although, we're right in the sort of nexus of the sort of environmental movement and sustainability, there's a load of sort of financial and behavioral issues that sort of make it quite difficult for us to sort of power forward. And, it's not a complaint, because it's, everyone has those issues, but it can be a real challenge sometimes, and particularly the bigger the business that you're talking to, they want the big impact, the big story, but quite often on the ground, they've outsourced their cleaning or their waste management or their recycling, and their people on the ground are getting squeezed to tiny margins by the same people who want a big impact. And there's some real disjointed thinking around at the moment where the corporates and people need to get their story straight and story right, that supports recycling and supports sustainability across the piece. And actually, we have some of the most fun and the most progress and the most action from owner-managed businesses, because they tend to get it and they tend to go, yeah, okay, I get that. I'm happy to pay a bit more for this. I'm happy to put a bit more effort in, because I can see there's a real impact here, both to the environment and also to my sustainability story that I'm trying to tell my customers. And we've done some great work with companies like Lara Intimates, who make women's underwear from dead stock fabric, and we're working on their fabric recycling. And there's some great stories out there. But it is a challenge to get all of that change when people are still a little bit focused on the bottom line, but it's changing in the right direction.
Could you offer one piece of advice for our listeners which could help them with their purpose, and what would that be?
Yeah, I sort of touched on this earlier, really, which is don't just start doing something today. People get slightly obsessed with wanting to know the truth before they act, and get 80% of the truth and then act, and then figure out the other 20%. We've got till 2050, which is 30 years, to become net carbon neutral. Forgotten that. What's the exact phrase? Net zero carbon. But basically, we've got another 30 years to sort ourselves out. And to get there, every 10 years, we need to halve our carbon impact. And the first 10 years is really easy, because there's loads of stuff you can do: buy green energy, start recycling, get an electric car, change your boiler at home. Relatively easy stuff to do. And all the technology exists. The next 10 years is a bit harder, but still achievable. And technologically, have caught up a little bit by then. And in 30 years' time, or year 21 to 30, we don't really know how we're going to get there. But the assumption is that we'll have figured it out by the time we get there. But don't worry about that, because we can't answer those questions anyway. Sort the stuff out that you can do now. Look at your scope 1 emissions. Look at your scope 2 emissions. Don't worry about your scope 3 emissions overtly at the moment. And just do stuff, get out there, do stuff, change habits, get organized. There's 20 things you can do tomorrow. Most of them cost you very little money. Do it, get out there. If you don't want to know and you want a list of ideas, you can DM me and I'll send you hundreds of things you can get on and do.
Brilliant. And you as an organization, I would hazard a guess, are quite environmental. What sort of things have you done? Like, is it through procurement? Is it through the managing of the operations? And what sort of things have you done as an organization to minimize your impact?
Well, we work on this all the time. We're in the sort of holding pattern for becoming a B corporation. I think they're so overwhelmed with applicants at the moment, and we do loads of sort of ISO 40001, all that sort of stuff. But actually, fundamentally, it's day-to-day behaviour that you need to change. Everybody in the office is super engaged around any initiatives that we've got, and we do loads of things to reduce our impact. But at the end of the day, 90% of our impact comes from driving trucks around cities that run on fossil fuels. And we have sort of at the heart of our sort of impact strategy is our transport agenda and our vehicle logistics agenda and reducing the carbon impact of our logistics platform. And we're doing three things in that area. One is moving to electric vehicles, and all of our deliveries now are on electric vehicles. We do deliveries on cargo bikes as well, but it's harder to do collections at the moment because you can't get big collection vehicles that run on electric at the moment. They have to run on diesel. Where we do have diesel vehicles, we work to make sure that they're the highest standards. So we've got ultra low emission vehicles. And then it's about, if you've got a vehicle, it's about making sure that its impact is as minimal as possible. So we have software to make sure we're optimizing routes. And then a key thing, I'm going to sound like a stuck record, is back to behavior. And so we put a black box on all the vehicles, which monitors driving behavior. And if you've got a super efficient, super clean vehicle that has all sorts of technology to make it nice and efficient, but you drive it like Lewis Hamilton, it's going to consume more fuel and it's going to burn through more brakes and rub off more tire. So we monitor driver behavior. We monitor it for safety, but a big part of that is monitoring it for environmental reasons. And we track harsh braking, harsh acceleration, harsh cornering, idling time, which is getting out and leaving the vehicle running because you can't bother to turn the ignition key. And we have a league table. And if you're at the top of the league table, there's a big prize every quarter. iPhones and holidays, not a £50 Marks and Spencer voucher, like a prize that's worth it. But also the drivers, both the men and the women drivers, are super competitive. And even the ones that said, this is ridiculous, I'm not interested in any of that, are now fighting to get up the league table. So again, it's about the behavior of things, and even our electric vehicles, if you drive an electric vehicle really badly, we charge them with renewable energy, but if you drive them really badly, they're going to need more charge at the end of the day, which is using renewable energy that somebody else could buy, and you're rubbing off tires and brakes. And at the moment, I think it's something like 20% of vehicle emissions are from tires and brake pads, and there's no way of capturing those. And so, the little tiny particulates and air emission and, coming to school gates and into watercourses is coming from tires and brakes. So even an electric vehicle has emissions. So this notion of it being zero emission is another bit of green hyperbole, because it's not zero emission. And so we're constantly working on trying to reduce. And it's what I said earlier, is that, we can have lots of nice stories and PR around the fact that we've got recycled paper in the office. It makes diddly squat difference for what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is reduce the impact of our vehicles, and that's what we're putting all our effort in.
It's interesting, the vehicle emission stuff, isn't it? Because we had a guy called Nick Malden on, and his organisation monitors the exhausts in real time, and they monitor all new vehicles, and they're trying to monitor all the old vehicles as well. So you actually get the actual emissions from it. And he brought up in our podcast about the tyres and the brake emissions and said it is something that needs to be looked at more. And it's interesting that your organisation and you are looking at it and trying to reduce it.
Yeah, and we've done work with King's College. We put air quality monitors in the vehicles. Our operatives wore them when they were working around. We have an app now that we give to landlords and business improvement districts where they can obviously track the recycling rate and where their customers are, but it also links into King's API so they can see what the air quality is in their local area. So we do quite a lot of air quality mapping as well. And obviously, London's air quality and Birmingham's air quality issue isn't directly as a result of First Mile, but we recognise that we contribute to that, and it's why we're delivering on bicycle because using a cargo bike for deliveries is even lower impact than an electric vehicle. So we're doing a lot of work on it, but the sort of the sort of alternative fuel vehicles is sort of frustrating because councils and sort of local politicians want everyone to have electric HGVs, and they sort of they sort of unfairly, not unfairly, they're unhelpfully targeting big lorries and saying, why can't these be electric? Why can't these be hydrogen based? When it actually doesn't make much environmental sense, because right now we double shift a vehicle. But if we went to electric, we'd have to have two vehicles because we could only use it one shift because the other shift would have to be charging. And therefore, the carbon impact of two electric vehicles, which have got a much higher carbon impact than a diesel vehicle anyway, is absolutely massive. And local politicians are thinking about it from there, that they're ultimate in being NIMBYist about things. They just don't care as long as it's not, they're not environmentalists, they just don't care as long as it's not happening on their patch. And they just want to push all these emissions elsewhere rather than thinking about it in a more holistic sense. And at the same time, they are not addressing the issue which could be addressed today, which is small delivery vans. Because our entire fleet of small delivery vans is electric, and it's been electric for 2 years. And they're much cheaper to run than petrol and diesel delivery vans. And what city mayors should be just doing is going, you can't come into the city in anything that's less than a 3-ton vehicle unless it's electric, because they're out there. They're commercially viable, but you've got Amazon and other delivery companies all doing this instant delivery in old diesel vehicles. And if they just said you can only come in with an electric vehicle, it would stop this sort of madness of instant delivery, and it would get the emissions down way more than the 10% of vehicles which are HGVs. So as a result, I'd like to announce that I'm running for London Mayor in May. No, I'm not.
No, you're not. I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty amazing. Because actually, the experience that you have, and this goes on to my next question, the experience that you have would actually be incredibly beneficial, to be honest with you, because you'd actually understand what's going on in the real heart of things. And there's a lot of talk about plastic at the moment, and there is a lot of celebrities saying no plastic, and is plastic as bad for the environment as people are making it out to be?
It depends where you. It depends at which point you're looking at it in its life cycle, really. And the issue with plastics in the oceans isn't a plastics issue, and it isn't a recycling issue. It is a basic waste management issue, and the fundamental reason that we have waste management as a concept, as an environmental concept, is to control waste after it is generated. And the first thing that you need to do as a waste management person is control the waste and stop it escaping. And then when you've got it, you need to do something with it, which is either landfill it, incinerate it, recycle it, wash it, and reuse it, whatever it is. But the first thing you've got to do is to stop it escaping. And the ocean problem is the fact that there's no formal waste management there is no formal waste management in the countries where this plastic is coming from. And actually, nobody's changed what they're doing. The only thing that has changed is the form in which people buy things from the market, because the waste disposal route is the same. And people in developing countries have always thrown their waste into rivers to get rid of it. And it just turned out it was organic packaging, which was paper bags, banana leaves, bamboo tubes, whatever it was, went into the river, didn't cause a problem. We then suddenly had companies, I've mentioned a few names earlier in the podcast already, selling noodles or shampoo or cleaning products in plastic pouches, which then got thrown into the river, because that's the way that waste management always happened in developing countries. And all of that plastic has ended up in the oceans. And that's the only thing that's changed, is the type of packaging that we're using in developing countries. And people in developing countries are trying to increase their standard of living with better hygiene, with better food, and it's coming packaged in plastics. And that's what's changed. So the issue is not so much the plastic as the problem of not having any formal waste management in countries where the packaging is coming from. And there's ways around that. I mean, there's some great innovative companies like making plastic out of seaweed, so when it ends up in the ocean, it completely disappears. And for me, that's fine if you accept that it's okay to keep throwing material into rivers. But actually, what we should potentially be looking at is, how do we control the waste in the first place? And then let's look at its recyclability. And sort of then if you then turn your mind to sort of Western economies, and let's talk about the UK, yes, it's frustrating that we've got lots of items packaged in plastics, and everyone goes to the peeled satsuma that's put in a clamshell, and obviously that's crazy. And supermarket executives or purchasing people in supermarkets should be put in a market square and flogged with satsumas or something, just as punishment. But because it's just stupidity, really. And we consumers don't have to buy this stuff. But the issue really is, we're producing lots and lots of plastics that we can't recycle easily, because they're blended with other materials, they're composite materials. 60% of clothing now is made out of plastic, but it's blended in with cottons, it's blended in with other fibers, it's blended in with wools, it's blended in with denim, and therefore it's very difficult to recycle and recover it. Therefore, we need a different technology for recycling plastics, which are hard to recycle through a mechanical means of recycling. And that technology is probably almost certainly going to be some form of chemical recycling, where the plastic is broken back down into the building blocks, the chemical building blocks for making new plastic products, rather than a mechanical system, which is grinding it up, washing it, and then reforming it into a plastic product. So I don't think you can escape from the fact that we're going to have plastics, because plastics fundamentally are an amazing product that increase the longevity of a product. They are lightweight, they make it easy to package and move around. We just need to get better at managing it. And sure, there's some, you can pick loads of examples of where plastics are used in a crazy way, and we should get rid of those. But fundamentally, we're going to end up with plastics. And people that say they're going to have, a plastic-free world or a zero plastic world, they're sort of not being realistic or honest with themselves.
That's really good to hear. I totally agree. It's that whole life cycle, isn't it? People use glass once, and the using plastic is so much more carbon efficient than that glass. It'd be great just to understand how we connect with you more and learn more about you as an organization. And obviously all of your social media handles and everything will be on our webpage for the podcast.
Yeah, sure. So I First Mile are at First Mile on Twitter. Similar, I think we're the same on Instagram. We've got a weird one on LinkedIn, but you'll find us anyway at First Mile on LinkedIn. If you want to hear what I'm talking about, I'm just at Bruce Bratley on LinkedIn. I mainly use LinkedIn and a bit of Twitter. So if you want to hear what I'm sort of talking about, follow me on LinkedIn. Check me out on LinkedIn. The website is firstmile.co.uk. You can find out what we're going now. We've got a blog running on there. If you are listening and you're at home, go to First Mile Home, which is just firstmilehome.com, and that has some home services, and you can buy green energy for your home from us there as well, and enhance your recycling services with our First Mile Home service. And we're competing in the world of podcasting. You can listen to my podcast, which is available on Spotify and Apple, and it's called Wasted. So if you just look up First Mile Wasted, you'll find the podcast, and you can hear. It's not really talking about First Mile, but it's talking. We've got some nice guests on there as well, so you can check us out. But obviously, not as good as this podcast, which is amazing.
Oh, thanks. No, I love the name. Love the name Wasted.
My friend actually that I was at uni with, who now he's actually just got an album out at the moment. He did the jingle. It's not, it's not quite the Dr. Dre level of production, but it's quite a nice little jingle. So it's done by a friend of mine.
Brilliant. Bruce, thank you so much. And we didn't actually, even though I mentioned it in the beginning, we didn't even talk about all the good stuff that you've been doing through this coronavirus. And I think you've got lots of blogs and things. And maybe if we could just quickly just touch upon it. And I think it's really important. The reason why I think it's important is because what you did very quickly was look at the capacity of yourself as an organization and see how you could help and change. And you were delivering flowers, you were delivering food in your vehicles. You were doing so much more than just your normal day job, as it were.
Yeah, so we basically London came to a standstill. People couldn't get food. There was nurses working around the clock and doctors working around the clock who couldn't get hand creams and PPE equipment and food and snacks in hospitals. So we basically did three things. One, we delivered loads of stuff to hospitals, and we did that for NHS charities. But also at the time we couldn't talk about something, but actually we delivered PPE to hospitals. We were paid for that by the NHS, and it was quite funny really. They only announced that they were getting help delivering PPE when the London Fire Brigade agreed to do it, because I think that was a bit more of a sort of sellable story than saying there's a waste company delivering your PPE. But we delivered millions of items of PPE to hospitals. Lots of offices that were closing had loads of like really sort of mundane things like biscuits and tea bags that they were going to throw out. So we took those into hospitals through NHS charities, UCL charity. We worked with a lot, just so that hospital workers could get biscuits and tea and things like that in between their shifts. So we did loads of that stuff, which is just sort of in many ways waste minimization, avoiding waste. We delivered furniture to our staff so they had a nice comfortable chair at home. We moved things around for various people. We then realized that people couldn't get fresh fruit and veg, so we did a deal with a wholesaler who actually was the dad of one of the people that works for me, who had a wholesale business based up in Warwickshire that just used to supply restaurants, and obviously had loads of fruit and veg that he couldn't get rid of because all the restaurants were shut. So we set up a veg box scheme in sort of 36 hours before that went live. And then then somebody contacted us, a woman called Miranda, who'd read in the newspapers on the Friday that garden centres who'd grown all of these small plants for the Easter weekend, and they'd spent since January growing all these plants, we're going to have to landfill them all because all the garden centres were closed. And from the Friday she called me on Saturday morning and said, would you be able to deliver plants for us? So from between the Friday and the Monday, she set up a plant delivery company. And then we had, for the next month, 4 vehicles just delivering plants from wholesalers all over London. And that was really important because it was a waste minimisation, waste avoidance activity. But the amount of joy it brought to people was incredible, because a lot of people were just stuck at home. They had a garden which was bare soil, and then suddenly they were unable to, and they couldn't get to the garden centre. They never had time to look at the garden before. Or there might have been avid gardeners that were planning on going to the garden centre, and we just turned all these like brown gardens into like amazing flower beds because people could actually get out there and do some gardening. So really good for mental health as well. So yeah, it was a busy old time.
Brilliant. I love it. Such an inspiration. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and finding out more about First Mile. You're geographically based in London and Birmingham, aren't you? Are you going to be?
We do the whole of the UK now, but we're doing direct delivery of services in London and Birmingham. We do the whole of the UK. We've launched 2 weeks ago a full e-commerce website, so you can just go on the website, order services anywhere in the UK we either deliver it direct or deliver it through one of our trusted partners elsewhere in the UK. So we're open for business everywhere.
Brill. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Great to be on the show. Thank you very much. Take care.
So you really enjoy sustainability and want to be a part of the solution? Come and join our vibrant community now. Book a call and we can talk more.